He's saying, Lord, why do you allow the persecution of your people? Doesn't seem fair. Is this justice, Lord? We may find ourselves sometimes asking some similar questions. Why all the senseless violence in our world? Why the exploitation of those who are most vulnerable? Why are the screams of the innocent never heard? Where is the justice, Lord? I think what we ought to understand is that you and I, we don't want justice. Not really. We might call for social justice and justice within the context of how we view right and wrong in our world, but we don't want real justice. We don't want God's justice. See, God's justice calls for all to be punished. God's justice says that there is no remnant of the faithful remaining. God's justice declares that all are guilty in his sight. You and me and every person that has ever existed, guilty and deserves God's judgment. My friends, God's justice puts us in the courtroom standing alone as the foreman of the jury reads our verdict, guilty on all charges. To understand true justice, God's justice, is to recognize that no person in all creation is above it, no matter how innocent they may appear or how good they seem to be. No one. And this is why the gospel doesn't make any sense. Right? It's why the love of God is so difficult for us to sometimes comprehend and understand. See, God saw fit to remove the guilty verdict placed on us, and instead he declared Christ guilty for our sake. God ordained that Christ suffer in our place, that the person of Jesus be disfigured in the eyes of God, so that we could be made new, cleansed, and holy in his sight. See, God's transfer of our guilty verdict upon Jesus means that the pure righteousness of Christ is transferred to the believer in faith. Not on account of good works, but purely on account of the riches of God's mercy. And when we look back at the focus of our reading this morning, we see where God provides some clarity to Habakkuk in the midst of his great turmoil and frustration. See, in God's response to his prophet's complaint, he says this in chapter 2. It says, "Then the Lord replied, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets, so that a herald may run with it." God is saying, hey, make sure you pay attention. Use your best handwriting, because when this message is declared, people got to know what I'm saying, what I have declared. When a sinner's faith rests in Jesus alone, the perfect righteousness of God that could not be achieved by man was given to man. That God gives his perfection and seals his name on the sinner, not on account of good works, but on account of what Christ had given and done for us on the cross. That man was justified by faith.